which is on the back side. Technical presentation, the non-technical audience.
Yep.
Please welcome Alex.
Thank you. Satoshi Nakamoto, the man behind Bitcoin. You've all probably heard of the digital currency Bitcoin, but might not know how it all got started. On October 31st, 2008, a computer programmer who went by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto released a 9-page white paper with the first ever mention of Bitcoin. A few months later, he released Bitcoin's first ever software, and he partnered with coders and computer programmers online to improve it until 2011, when he mysteriously disappeared. To this day, no one has been able to figure out the true identity of this mysterious computer programmer. Throughout my presentation today, we are going to be diving deep into all of the conspiracy theories surrounding his disappearance. And by the end of the presentation, I will reveal his true identity. Just kidding. We are going to be breaking down his white paper section by section into understandable material so that hopefully by the end of it you have a better idea of how Bitcoin works on a technical level. The first section of the paper is the abstract. This sums up to saying that Sean would be able to send Michael $6 digitally without having to go through a financial intermediary. Why is this good? Because it's going to decrease costs, increase efficiency. Why can't we do this? Because the financial intermediary acts as a trusted middleman. They prevent double spending. What is double spending? Sean sends Michael $6 digitally. Then Sean sends that exact same digital $6 to Emily. Hence, double spending. The introduction section further explains the problem and the need for financial intermediaries to act as those trusted middlemen. They can see all of the transactions, and hence they would reject Sean sending the additional 6 to Emily. What Nakamoto states in his paper is, what is needed is an electronic payment system based on cryptographic proof instead of trust, allowing any two willing parties to transact directly with each other without the need for a trusted third party. What's that mean? Let's use math and science, and we can fix all of our trust issues. The transaction section. Bitcoin, according to Nakamoto's paper, is a chain of digital signatures where each owner transfers the coin to the next by digitally signing a hash of the previous transaction and the public key of the next owner and adding these to the end of the coin. Do I ever need to explain that section? Let's break that down a little bit. Think of a letter you received in the mail. You want to send that letter to somebody else, so what do? What do?
Put a stamp on it.
Put a stamp on it. But before you put a stamp on it, you're going to cross off your name, you're going to put their name on it. You're going to cross off your address, you're going to put their address on it, and then you put the stamp on it, and then send it, put it back in the mailbox and send it out. That's kind of like how the Bitcoin exchange works. When you're receiving a letter, you're being paid in Bitcoin. When you're sending a letter out, you're paying someone else in Bitcoin. Except each time that you send the letter out, written somewhere on it is a history of where that letter's been that creates a ledger. With Bitcoin, there's a history of where the Bitcoin has been previously, and it creates a ledger of Bitcoins called a blockchain. So the blockchain is the history of the Bitcoin's previous transactions in the form of a ledger. In the real world, we can only send that letter to one person because there's only one physical, tangible letter. But with digital currencies, it's possible to send that exact same Bitcoin to multiple recipients. We come back to our problem of double spending. Nakamoto states a solution for this with something called a timestamp. The timestamp section discusses the solution. The timestamp server software would take a small section of the transaction data called a hash and timestamps it. Then it's made public for everyone on the network to see. And this proves there was a primary transaction that existed at a certain time and is therefore valid. Each time the data, the hash, is stamped, it includes all of the previous hashes and increases the size of the transactions in the ledger. As the transaction history increases, the blockchain increases, the longest one being the correct one. To be able to use the timestamp server on the blockchain, it relies on nodes, which are a network of computers. Each node is a computer that verifies transactions using a proof of work system to accomplish this. There are thousands of nodes in the Bitcoin network. The network broadcasts all the new transactions to the nodes, which they must agree and in order for the transaction to go through. The proof of work the nodes are solving is a mathematical puzzle. A computer must do the work to solve it using CPU power and electricity. This prevents people from spamming the network because it would require too much CPU power to do so. The difficulty of the puzzle is adjusted so that one node will solve each puzzle every 10 minutes on average. And you can think of this like a teacher giving a class a problem to solve, let's say an algebra problem. So she writes it on the board. She's the network broadcasting it, everyone in the room can see it. Then they go and try to solve it, so they're verifying it, and this is referred to as mining Bitcoin. The first student to solve it would bring it up to the teacher. She would verify it's correct, and if it is, she would write it on the board to be broadcast for everyone to verify that that is the correct solution, and this would only take a short amount of time, because you can just plug the solution into the problem. If it's correct, and this would be added to the ledger of algebra problems for the semester, the blockchain. Incentives. Why would anyone want to spend time, electricity, CPU power solving mathematical puzzles to verify other people's transactions? This comes in two forms: being rewarded in Bitcoin and transaction fees. The cost to mine Bitcoin comes with CPU power and electricity by the nodes in the network. The way new Bitcoins come into circulation is through miners verifying transactions and discovering a new block. There are only 21 million Bitcoins that can ever be mined. Think of Bitcoin like gold that must be mined out of the ground. Bitcoin must be mined via digital means. Like gold, Bitcoin is limited and finite in supply. Reclaiming disk space. With all these transactions being added to a block, after a while, it starts to take up a lot of space. What Nakamoto states is that old transactions can be discarded after a set amount of time, but the top layer, a trace, must be kept so that the chain does not break. Simplified payment verification. In this section, Nakamoto states that an individual does not have to download the whole history of the chain to verify that it's all correct. They can just ask for the proofs. And if we go back to the teacher and the algebra problem example, at the end of the semester, she doesn't have to look through all of the solutions and the work to see all of the answers to the questions. She can just ask for the solution, the actual answer, the end problem. And this relies on people being honest. Hence, no one's writing down the wrong answers and telling the teacher, yeah, these are all the ones we verified throughout the semester. Combining and splitting values. I can send you $1, then $1, then 50 cents, then 50 cents, then 50 cents, or I can send you $3.50. And that's exactly how Bitcoin works as well. You can split and recombine it. Privacy. In the current banking model, identities are tied to transactions, which go through a trusted third party and end up at a counterparty. In the Bitcoin network model, and the public is basically not informed or thought of as separate. In the Bitcoin model, the identities are the separate part, and the transactions go through the public in the form of a ledger, keeping privacy. Calculations. This section sums up to saying that honest nodes, the computers in the network that pass around the data and find new blocks, will find a block before a fraudulent one does, keeping the integrity and the efficiency of the system intact. We discussed every section of Nakamoto's paper, and I encourage you all to go online tonight and look it up and read more about it. It will give you a better understanding of how Bitcoin works. I want to thank everyone for sticking with me through that speech. Now get out there and impress your friends and your coworkers with your newfound knowledge of Bitcoin. Thank you. Thank you.